Well, Dr. Nigel Farrier from Australia has joined us again. I am delighted to say, Nigel, you are most welcome. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, thank you for asking me, John. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure indeed for us. And just to, by way of background, Nigel brings over 40 years of medical experience to this, so we always value his opinion. Now, Nigel, what's the situation like in general in Australia at the moment as regards COVID-19?
Basically, anywhere outside of New South Wales or Sydney is fine. I'm in WA, Western Australia, as you know. Tomorrow night or Monday morning, we'll be coming out of our lockdown. We've been okay for the last 4 or 5 days. It's basically been masks only, so there'll be no need to wear masks probably from Monday. And we've not had any new cases, so we're okay. Sydney, unfortunately, has got severe problems.
This is New South Wales, isn't it?
New South Wales, yes. They're now up to a total of 480 cases. They've had 52 in the last 24 hours, of which 2 were in quarantine because they'd flown in from abroad or from an interstate. But the other 50, 26 were out in the community whilst infectious. So it doesn't bode well. It was only about 24 the day before and 15, 16 the day before that. So the numbers of people that are out in the community whilst infectious is increasing. And not only that, but they've got a lot of people there flouting the lockdown.
So we've got 2 things there. We've got this extremely infectious Delta variant. People have been out in the community while they're very infectious, and people aren't, or some people at least, aren't following the regulations. It sounds like a bad combination.
And the police have been instructed to crack down, and people don't like that either. But you know, it is what it is. As I said in the last time, you know, Australia did really well, along with many other countries at the beginning.
Yeah.
But now we're having to count the cost a little bit with our lockdowns and so on. Our Prime Minister recently announced a 4-phase plan, which sounds great, but basically it was just a few ideas that they'd all sorted out. First phase we're in. Second phase would mean international travel caps could be lifted for unvaccinated and vaccinated travels, and lockdowns would only be used in extreme circumstances. But there's been no quantitative measure put on that, which is unfortunate. Third phase, treating COVID like the seasonal flu, no more lockdowns, no border restrictions, and so on. And then the 4th phase, back to pre-pandemic travel and life. But they haven't put any status on vaccinations that are needed to complete that. I'm sure they might eventually, but the goalposts in this country do move. Originally, it was going to be everybody would have had 1 vaccination by October. They had to change that recently to, well, it might be this year, because the vaccination take-up was not good. There's a lot of vaccine hesitancy and poor supply, although we are going to be trebling the Pfizer vaccine intake from Pfizer as of next week, I think, end of next week. So we're going to go from 300,000 to 1 million doses imported into the country each week. So yeah, it's going all right. We've got over 9 million vaccinated, but it's still under 33% of over 16s have had their first vaccination. Under 11% over 16s have had their second dose. But to go back to,
I mean, to call it a stroll out might be a bit extreme, but you can see why people.
I've been referring to it as a stroll out.
Yeah.
It might pick up pace a little bit. But to get back to New South Wales, they've got some problems with the numbers in hospital. So they've got 47 in hospital, which doesn't sound a lot, but 16 are in intensive care and 5 on ventilators. Out of those 16 in intensive care, 8 or half are under 35 and 1 is 18, I think. He's certainly a teenager, which, you know, that's not boding well.
Yeah. So we're talking about 480 cases recognised, Nigel, and 16 in intensive care.
Yeah, well, 47 is in hospital, which is 10%.
Yeah.
And about a third of those are in intensive care, 5 on a ventilator, so about a third of those again.
I mean, obviously all the cases aren't being picked up, but, you know, assuming 50% of the cases are being picked up, this is pointing to something like a 5% hospitalisation rate in New South Wales, isn't it?
Give or take, yes. I mean, at the moment it's 10% of the cases picked up. So we don't know how many there aren't at the moment, but it's certainly going to increase.
I mean, we don't want to be alarmist, but should it increase to many thousands of cases in New South Wales? There are limitations, of course, to the hospital system anywhere, but you recently pointed out the limitations that you know of personally in Western Australia.
I know of in Western Australia, yes, with the ambulance ramping and hospitals calling out code blacks because they're full. I don't know what it's like in New South Wales at all. I have got no reports or anything from there. Yeah. It's not been quite so bad in WA at the moment. We have only got 1 case in hospital and he's in intensive care, but he's a sailor from a container freight ship that was going through our waters, so he got airlifted off.
Right. So is New South Wales going to be like closed off? Are they going to put fences around it?
Basically, at the moment, Sydney and surrounding areas are in lockdown. They have spoken about just suddenly sticking the police out with roadblocks to stop people going in and out of New South Wales.
I mean, are the Victoria Police and the Queensland Police at the border stopping people coming from New South Wales too?
I don't think so at the moment, but that is in the offing, might happen very soon. It happens in WA. When we put up our hard borders, we sent the police out to the border crossings and just stopped people going out or coming in unless they had a very good reason. So, I mean, delivery trucks and so on.
But no, it was basically closed off, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we've just had our little local lockdown, which is Perth and Peel region, and they went and stuck police roadblocks. And I mean, they were turning back 1,000 a day.
Yeah.
People who thought that it would be all right to leave.
Yeah.
So, they've gone now, obviously, but yeah.
So actually keeping people in Perth, and of course the vast majority of the population in WA does live in Perth, the Greater Perth area.
Yes, yeah, it's about 2.1 million out of 2.6 million.
Yeah. So could we have the situation I can sort of vaguely see here, Nigel, is situation could deteriorate in New South Wales, but that could be compartmentalised from the rest of Australia.
Yes.
Because the rest of Australia has been so good at this. It's just such a pity we've had this outbreak in. It's
flights from Sydney are basically stopped. A few cases may get through, but they've got to go into hotel quarantine wherever they end up for 2 weeks.
So domestic hotel quarantine as well as international hotel quarantine.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just so ironic that they've done so well for so long, and now, and even the outbreak in Victoria, of course, where a few months back. I mean, that was contained, wasn't it? But that wasn't the Delta variant. I think this is the difference in this case.
I don't think it was, because that was quite a few months ago.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't Delta. Yeah.
I think that Sydney or New South Wales, it's going to get worse before they can contain it. It's just unfortunate. I don't think they stomped on it fast enough. A few weeks ago, we went into lockdown with 1 case.
Yep.
It's Delta variant shutdown.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's worked. So WA is now okay at the moment. So do you think they will contain it in New South Wales? What's your kind of gut feeling on this, Nigel?
But my gut feeling is that they will.
Oh, right, that's good. Right, that's good.
The Premier of New South Wales is going on to the radio and the TV frequently saying, come on, people, you've got to stop this transmission. Play the game, stop being stupid.
Yeah.
So, I think they'll get on top of it. But it's going to take, I reckon, a month.
Am I right in thinking that the federal government is focusing vaccination resources into New South Wales?
Yes, they are delivering or have delivered an additional 300,000 Pfizer vaccinations into Sydney.
Yeah.
Or it's due to go in next week to help up the vaccination levels that are happening in New South Wales.
So rather than going by this strict age stratification strategy that we basically used in the UK most of the time, Australia is using its resources in vaccination more strategically.
They've increased the number that we're getting in from 300,000 a week to 1 million a week from Pfizer. And they'll be distributed evenly around all the states except for New South Wales, which is getting this little boost.
Right.
They're still trying to encourage those over 60, 70 to get the vaccine. We're mandating that workers in aged care must be vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I think they've got to have vaccination by September.
Yeah.
If they don't, they're out of a job. It's been mandated. Now, that's all except for Victoria. Because of the way the constitution or something is done there, it's got to be the the chief health officer has to mandate it, whereas in all the other states, it's the Premier mandates it, or the cabinet. So it's slightly different there, but I'm sure they'll do the same.
It would be surprising if they didn't fall into line with that. Yeah. And of course, you're talking about a month there. I mean, that's probably a minimum, really, because we need quite a lot of people. We need to get 2 doses into them, don't we? And
well, I think the Premier in New South Wales has indicated that the lockdown will be strict until the end of the month. Now, we're only on the 10th, so that's another 3 weeks.
Yeah. Right. So, as we've been saying for some time, Nigel, you and me, Australia's still on a knife edge.
Yes, we are on a bit of a knife edge, but, we can cope and shut it down quickly, providing people adhere to the rules.
Yeah.
And we just need to increase the vaccination rate rapidly to try and get some sort of community immunity or herd immunity or whatever. As I said, we've got over 9 million vaccinated or vaccinations, which is 6.7 million have got the first dose and 2.2 or 3 million have had the second dose, give or take. So it's only, as I said, 33% first dose, 11% second dose.
Yeah. So
we need to increase that dramatically.
There's a ways to go, right? So we will watch Australia with interest, Nigel. And we'll watch it with interest, and we're hoping for the best. Now, I believe you've been doing some reading on the Lambda variant, Nigel.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're more up to date than me.
Okay, so the Lambda variant was C37 or something that was first found in Peru.
Peru, yeah.
Yeah, C37.
Yeah.
Now it's similar to the Delta one, in that the 452 position was L452 to R from the Delta, but the Lambda is L452 to Q. Now, I cannot remember what LRQ stand for, arginine and so on. I can't remember.
Well, these, I mean, what we're talking about here is 452 is the 452nd position of the amino acid that makes up the spike protein. And the L to the R and the L to the L to the R, I think you said, is the change in the amino acid. Yeah, you're right, of the 20.
Yes.
And it always, I find it amazing that viruses are made of the same 20 amino acids as Nigel, and indeed me, and indeed you.
And you.
Yeah. And they're all left-handed amino acids as well. It just incredible, but there you go. So that's what that is. So what do you think the significance of this mutation might be, Nigel?
It's only a variant of interest according to the World Health Organization from 14th of June. Now, I came across a paper that is as yet not peer-reviewed, and I did a little bit of reading, but I didn't go into it thoroughly. And the opinions of the people, the scientists that wrote the paper, they wonder whether this is going to be more infectious than Delta and more vaccine resistant. They haven't come to that conclusion because not enough tests have been done. But they're thinking that the change in the 452 position may make it spread faster and be more vaccine resistant.
Yeah, and these positions are what's called the receptor binding domain, aren't they? It's the bit of the spike protein that actually chemically bonds with the ACE2 receptor to get into the cells of the person that's going to be infected. So
yeah, the other
it makes sense
that I saw was the mRNA, the messenger RNA vaccine. Basically inventor, I've forgotten his name, Roger Mulroney or something like that.
Yeah.
I watched a video that had him in it today, and it was quite interesting about how it's not exactly a spike, so it hasn't got, a big stick with a clump on the end. It's actually just a protein that's formed on the surface, and when it joins with the cell in the ACE2 receptor, it changes shape to assist the virus particle to get into the cell. I found it interesting. I mean, these little things are.
This is called induced fit in biology, and we get this. So, for example, quite a few hormones and physiological substances will actually chemically change the shape of the receptor site to fit in. It's called induced fit. But the idea that viruses have evolved a mechanism to do that, I just find it downright spooky. I mean, it's just
yes,
it's just spooky. Biology is just amazing beyond description. But it unfortunately, in this case, it's a bad thing because it could increase transmissibility.
How they picture this or have visualized this or worked this out is just beyond me. We're talking molecules.
Yeah. That could be a good question for Susan.
Ah, yes.
She's an expert in nanomedicine and macromolecules.
She may be able to shed more light on
it. We'll ask her about that one. Yeah. Last question, really, Nigel. UK, you've probably been following from 11,000 miles away. So basically, you'll probably know that we are opening up on the 19th of July. Off you go, boys and girls, go have fun.
Yes, Boris Johnson has said it's not mandated, it's recommended.
Yes, and Sajid Javid and him seem to be shoulder to shoulder on this.
Yeah.
Now, the way I read it, they're going for herd immunity strategy, basically. I mean, what's your take on this?
I loved it when he said we're going to rely on the British sensibility and the sensible people. Yeah.
Yeah.
From what I've seen of people in Australia, they're flouting the laws. Well, I'm not sure that they're going to adhere to them. I'm in England. So look, there's two possibilities here. One is it's a fine idea. You've got quite a good level of immunity from past infections and from a pretty good level of vaccinations now. Problem is Delta, bit more transmissible, not quite as good with the vaccines. I mean, it's better with the vaccine, travels a bit more. So it may well help spread the Delta a little bit more. Up until I saw today that we've got 8 people under 35 in intensive care in New South Wales, I was thinking that strategy may be okay because it's spreading more in the younger population. But when we've got a teenager in intensive care with COVID, it's a worry. But because you've got a good vaccination rate, I think you won't be getting 100,000 a day. I hope.
Oh, new infections. Yes, I think we will. Well, we don't want 5% of those hospitalised, that's for sure. But we won't get that because of the vaccination rate being higher, as you rightly say.
Yeah. What's your percentage of fully vaccinated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't remember. It's growing all the time, though. We're doing well. I think it's over 80% have had a single dose, and well over 50% now have had 2 doses. So there's been anecdotal reports. I've been watching some US news reports, and they've got an emergence of the Delta variant in particular states, and quite a few doctors anecdotally there are saying, look, this seems to make people sicker quicker, they seem to deteriorate more quickly, and they seem to it seems to be a higher proportion getting sick with the Delta variant. Now, I don't think we've got anything definitive on that yet, but it's kind of an extra unknown really to kind of throw into this mix. And the 8 in intensive care under the age of 35 in Sydney, I must say, I wasn't aware of that, and it's a concerningly high number.
I only found that out this afternoon.
Right.
So,
yeah.
That is a worry. Because you've got such a good vaccination rate in England, it won't be as bad. You've got 55% at least having had 2 vaccinations.
Fully vaccinated.
3 weeks after that, they'll be reasonably well covered against the Delta. They're likely to get fewer symptoms, and those symptoms to be milder. The people in South Wales haven't been vaccinated.
No. The antibody rates in the UK a few weeks ago from the Office for National Statistics were 90% of the population, basically.
I saw that. But good.
It's about 18% through natural infection. But quite a big chunk of those is after 1 dose of the vaccine, which of course is enough to make antibodies. But we know that 2 doses of the vaccine are necessary to give good levels of protection against the Delta. So it looks good, but it's not quite as good as it looks, because what you want is people to have 2 doses of the vaccine, or in my view, people who have been naturally exposed and had 1 dose of the vaccine will give an equivalent effect.
Yes.
And the other thing I'm thinking is, for me, if I've had 2 doses of the vaccine, perhaps, I'm not suggesting this, but perhaps it would be a good idea for me to be exposed now.
Well, I was just thinking that.
And that would be a booster. I would have a more polyclonal response.
Yeah. You've had the vaccinations, now you get the disease, or you've had the disease, now you get the vaccinations. I think at the end of the day, the effects will just about be equivalent, in that your immunity levels will go up quite nicely. And the fact, nowadays, if you're getting 2 vaccines and now you get COVID, it's going to be the Delta strain, you will start to develop antibodies for that mutation, which will be quite good.
So the antibodies are, if I was infected with Delta, right, as well as having my Pfizer-induced antibodies, I would have specific new antibodies induced by the Delta variant that were specific to the Delta variant.
Yes, that's my belief.
Yeah, no, that's what I understand as well. And of course, maybe even more importantly than that, the memory T lymphocytes and the memory B lymphocytes as well.
Yes.
Because I'm still hoping for long-term immunity from this virus. When I say long-term, I mean years and decades rather than.
Well, it was interesting. Was it you yesterday who said that they're looking at doing a booster, a 3rd dose 6 months after, sort of coming into winter like you get with the flu? I know Pfizer have got a new vaccine in development against the Delta strain to be used as a booster, which may be interesting. And I know here in Australia, they're talking about having maybe some sort of booster dose.
Yeah.
Early next year.
I mean, Pfizer was talking about that. I think it was yesterday. I think you're right. But I think the FDA poured quite a lot of cold water on that pretty quickly, saying it won't be necessary yet. But we are planning, or there are plans underway for a booster dose for the over 60s in the UK this autumn. But that won't be with a tweaked vaccine. It will be with an old-fashioned vaccine, or potentially a new protein-based vaccine.
Was the UK going to be doing a new study on giving a third booster dose, but of a different vaccine?
Yes, we are.
Which may be interesting to see.
Yeah, Lindsay told me about this. I think it's called heterologous vaccinations.
Yes, heterologous.
Yeah. How do you say it?
Well, I say it as it's homologous, which is the same.
Yeah.
And heterologous, which is different.
Oh, heterologous. Got it right.
Yeah, that's the way I say it. But
no, that sounds right. Yeah.
You're from up north.
I'm still learning words after all these years. It's my dyslexia comes out from time to time. Yeah, I mean the indications are that is going to generate a more efficacious immune response, because it's going to be more polyclonal in nature. You're giving different antigen challenges that will result in different antibody production profiles, that will result in different memory B and T cells being produced, which is clearly the way ahead. The mass immunity is clearly the way ahead. So if you don't mind, Nigel, I'm particularly concerned about this 47 hospitalizations in New South Wales. If you keep an eye on that for us, that would be very interesting, because that's got huge implications for the UK.
I'm looking at the figures every day. And if people want to look at it themselves, there's a website called covidlive.com.au.
Yeah.
And that has got all the Australian data on it. It's not only got Australian data, it's got some data from other countries as well. And that's basically been sourced from the Johns Hopkins website.
Yeah, which is excellent, of course. They're one of the unsung heroes of this pandemic. They've maintained that information database all the way through.
And the worldwide vaccination rates from Our World in Data. So if people were interested, they could go and have a look at that. Now, according to that, worldwide, there's 3.4 billion doses have been given.
Interesting.
Worldwide. Sounds a lot.
It does.
7 billion people or thereabouts. So that's almost
and a bit, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, that distribution has been very, very unequal so far.
Yes, there's several countries in Africa are crying poor. They've got massive problems there. We've got a big problem right on our doorstep with Indonesia. It's running rampant through there.
And that's Delta variant as well.
Yes, yeah. So Indonesia's suffering, well, I don't know how they're going to cope, because we were struggling ourselves to get enough vaccines.
Well, they're not coping. This is the whole point, Nigel, isn't it? Yeah. And that is feeding through into completely unnecessary deaths, which is the tragic. I mean, having worked with critically ill people, and you've worked with illness all your life. I mean, I don't know if you feel this, but when someone dies and you've done everything you possibly can, that's kind of one thing. But if someone dies and there's something else that could have been done, that's kind of a bad feeling. It's
Indonesia is running out of oxygen. It's India all over again. According to this, the deaths in Indonesia were 871.
Yeah,
and that brings their total up to about 65,000. But that's only official figures.
Yeah.
Like in India, you just don't know what the unofficial figures are.
All we know for sure is that it is higher. How much higher?
Yeah. Places like England, America, Australia, we've got reasonably good record keeping. Yeah. So our figures will be pretty close to the mark.
Yeah.
But that's it's an underestimate, unfortunately.
And Indonesia, like many poorer countries, you've got millions of people living in villages that basically have essentially no healthcare provision at all. People can get sick and die, never even get near a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist. Or
yes, yeah. I mean, it's India all over again, as I've said.
Yeah,
you've got to feel for these people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, on that note, Nigel, thank you for that update, and of course, we'd love to hear from you again. Next time you come on, we want some good news on New South Wales.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And
we've got good news on Western Australia.
Yeah, no, you have. I'm not. No. Western Australia is doing really well. Yeah.
We've got good news on the vaccinations coming into Australia. Hopefully, they'll get used.
When am I going to be able to come out for a few beers?
Well, that's a very good question at the moment.
It certainly is a good question.
Travel is not a very good idea.
No.
I would dearly.
I mean, realistically, flights from the UK to Australia, are we talking 2022?
Certainly not for a year. I can't envisage. Looking at this four-phase plan that our federal government has come up with in conjunction with the state governments, it's a bit wishy-washy because it's got no hard and fast figures on it. But the indications are that we're not going to enter the final phase and be travelling freely until 2023. Because to get into phase 2, he's talking, good vaccination levels. Well, we haven't got good vaccination levels. Hopefully we can increase that and start getting it up to 1 million a week. So that's still going to be quite a few months before we get up to about the 70-80% level of vaccination.
It's another 6 months at least, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, originally at the beginning of the year, when he said, we're going to start this vaccination program, everybody will have had at least one by October. Well, he's now put that out to the end of the year. And even once he was talking early next year. We shall wait and see, but I mean, things are looking up, I think, with vaccinations, America, England, Europe, now Australia, hopefully, increasing the vaccination rate. That eventually we will get these green passports, COVID passports or whatever. But I do have one problem with that. I've had AstraZeneca and I got my second one due next week. The FDA in America hasn't approved the AstraZeneca and they don't use it there. And they've been talking, well, you can't come into the United States unless you've been given an approved FDA-approved vaccination.
That's just, I mean, that is so ridiculous. I really feel that there will be political pressure to change that.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I read a week or so ago, a Bruce Springsteen concert on Broadway in New York.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, you've heard of it. I've heard of him as well. Yeah.
Singer or something, yeah.
The New York Council or whatever said, yes, that can happen. People will need to prove that they've had an FDA-approved vaccine. Canada, Europe, England, Australians couldn't go, even if we could get into the country, because we've all had AstraZeneca vaccinations.
Yeah, I think there will be political pressure from governments in the UK and Australia to, and indeed Europe, to put pressure on the United States about that. And I suspect
it's going to be interesting times ahead. I think next year when we're beginning to look at travelling again, if some governments turn around and go, well, you haven't had what we've approved, you can't come here. Well,
there's going to be a few kerfuffles.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay, Nigel, thank you so much for that update. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for sharing your experience with us all as well. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.
If you'd like to come back after that.
No worries.
Thanks, Nigel. Really appreciate it. Thank you.